Hello and welcome back to another Porch Session. Today I'm going to be sharing again from my heart regarding this journey and moment that the children of Israel had at the waters of Marah. Last time I spoke more specifically about the moment at the waters, and today I just want to share a little bit more of when the Lord began to speak to Moses after that miracle, that moment. And what really captured me about this sequence as I first began to really study this and digest these words some weeks ago was really this moment where the Lord speaks to the people through Moses. And this is really the first moment of covenant that God has with the Israelites in the desert. I'd often, in my mind, thought those moments came later and really had kind of ignored the sequence as being kind of a minor interval. But as the Lord slowed me down and I began to examine this passage, I realized that the Lord was speaking to them in covenant at this moment. And certainly there were some other moments where the Lord, while they were still in Egypt, spoke this way. But this was really the first moment as they're going towards the promised land where he begins to unfold the covenant language to them. This kind of, if you do this, I will do this. And so it's a very significant moment. And in my thinking, in my logic, I would have thought as they were celebrating on the other side of the Red Sea, that it would have been a perfect moment to unfold a covenant to his people because they're in celebration mode. They're rejoicing at what they had seen God do to their enemies. But in the wisdom of heaven, the Father unfolds a covenant moment in this moment of challenge and difficulty. And so, this says much about the Lord. One, that he is not a manipulator. He doesn't take advantage of our emotions. It's easy to get someone to agree to things when they're in extreme moments of celebration and also in very low positions. And so I just think this moment really unfolds much of the heart that the Lord has toward us. He understands, he sees what we walk through, and he wants to help us with this. But there are deeper goals, there are deeper desires that he wants to accomplish regarding us as people. And so we see in the 25th verse of this passage, the 15th chapter of Exodus, where the Lord begins to speak to Moses. And in the 26th verse, he says, if you listen carefully to the voice of the Lord. So this is Moses speaking as a messenger, as a mouthpiece to the children of Israel, bringing this message from the Lord, saying, if you will listen carefully, and if you will do what is right in his eyes. And I think it's so beautiful in this moment that he is not laying out a list of requirements. He is not putting a heavy load upon the Israelites. He's starting at this place of dialogue. He's inviting them to listen to him. He's signaling to them that he has things that he wants to teach them, things that he wants his people to know about him. And he's saying, if you will listen carefully, and if you will do what I ask. And certainly there's more that he says in a moment, but I just wanted to first pause at the way the Lord begins to speak to his people. And this so parallels Jesus. It so parallels our Lord, where he said to his disciples, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. When we follow Jesus, he doesn't throw heavy requirements on us. He invites us into relationship. He invites us to walk with him and learn of him. And we see this kind of language at the beginning of this journey into the wilderness, just after they had left Egypt, just after they had seen, now at this moment, two very strong miracles, and the goodness of God right before them. But he's bringing them into this place of knowing him, of recognizing him, and of seeing him in a very up-close way. And I love how he said, if you listen carefully. And so it's letting us know that the Lord is not going to be shouting, he's not going to be yelling, but he's inviting the children of Israel to come close, to come in close, and to learn of him. And he says, again, continuing in verse 26, that if we will pay attention to these commands and keep all of his decrees, he will not bring on us any of the diseases that he brought upon the Egyptians. And this phrasing, this sequence of addressing is so powerful, because the Lord is making known once again that he sees the Israelites, he sees them as they are. He is fully aware of what they have come from. And so in some ways we can think that the Lord is making a threat by saying that if you will do what I'm asking of you, I will not put these plagues upon you that I put on the Egyptians. But if we slow down and really contextualize this moment, the Israelites are not very far removed from Egypt geographically, and really as a people, they've just begun a journey of knowing the Lord. They had heard much about him in their time in Egypt, but they were more Egyptian than they were Israelite, just by the proximity of the culture that they were in. And the Lord was not harsh. He was not brutal in his approach of this fact. He understood where they had come from and what they had brought with them into the journey. And so, by speaking about these plagues, by bringing this context into his dialogue through Moses as the mouthpiece to these Israelites. He's making known to them that he understands what they're carrying in their hearts, and that they are more familiar with the idolatry of Egypt than they are with the Lord. And by listening carefully to him and by doing what he says, they are going to learn his ways as opposed to what they had learned before and known before. And the Lord understood that this was a process, that it was not something that was just discarded because they had crossed the Red Sea geographically. He understood that there was a learning and an indoctrination that they had been a part of because of the environment that they were exposed to, and the doctrines and the mindsets that they were familiar with. And so, in the Lord exposing this and directing the conversation to this, he's also very much saying to them something that they understood, that through all the miracles that they saw the Lord perform in Egypt before their eyes, he was addressing idolatry in a very specific way. And if you study this through scholarship, each of the miracles and the plagues that were brought on Egypt were exposures of the falseness of that idolatry. And we often can think that sequence was only for the Egyptians to really expose them, but it was also a display for the Israelites to see that these things that were held up as being true, as being normal, were not at all. And so this is what the Lord is saying in this moment is, I understand what you have carried with you into this desert. And we know later in this saga that there were people that had carried symbols of that idolatry with them, literally in their tents. But in this moment, the Lord is just saying, if you will choose me, if you will choose to listen to me and learn of my ways and obey what I instruct you, you will not have to face the consequence of idolatry. And not only that, the Lord continues, which is really the climax of this covenant. Not only will you escape the wrath that comes with idolatry, but I, the Lord, will heal you. And this is really what the journey, what the invitation is from the Lord, is that he wants to heal us. This is his desire. He sees us, he understands the circumstance of our lives, the things that we have been born into. Just like the Israelites, they were born into circumstances that they could not control. Their placement in that time, in that season, really had begun to unfold 300 or 400 years before them. And they did not have a choice in their geographic location. And the Lord understood this. But he also understood that there were things on the inside, a familiarity, an indoctrination, a culture that they were familiar with, and that just by bringing them from a place into a wilderness, that wasn't going to bring transformation alone. But the Lord understood that what they needed was healing. and that the journey into that healing was going to be a sequential unfolding through time of portions that their hearts could handle and could digest. And so I love the grace, I love the beauty of how the Lord invited them into this journey. Again, not putting a heavy load on them right at the front, but just inviting them into dialogue and saying, if you will learn of me, you will escape what comes from idolatry. And not only will you escape these kind of consequences, but the real story, my son and my daughter, is that I'm going to bring you into healing. And this is the story for our lives as well, is the Lord knows where He called us from. He knows what He has rescued us from. He knows the situations that we were born into, that we really had no choice in. But He also knows the things that we have picked up in our environment, the things that we have adopted, taken on, that are just simply familiar to us because of culture, because of ways of thinking of this age. And He understands us and where we've come from. And we don't even know how much of our own thinking comes from idolatry, where it comes from brokenness, but He's not put that upon us to know or to figure out. What He has said to us is that if you will listen carefully, if you will really pay attention to me and follow me, if you will do what I'm asking you to do, you will escape the punishment of idolatry. You will escape this. But even better, I will heal you. And this is what the Lord is calling us into. This is what our journey is about. The Lord is inviting us into healing. And my question to myself, the question that I've been asking myself in this season, and what I want to just present to you is, do you want healing? Do you desire to be whole? Because this is really the story. Jesus came to bring us salvation, but that salvation in its fullness is healing. And that is what the good news of the gospel is about. It's a story of holistic healing of us as His creation, as humans, but also the healing of the world, the healing of these things that became broken through sin and death, that are now, right now, unfolding around us. This promised land is available now, but to possess it, to be a citizen of that place, there's a requirement to be a whole people. And a whole people live there. And Jesus is the firstborn of that new place. And through the gift of salvation, we have been brought into that process of healing. And He knows that it's too much to receive all of it at once. But through the gift of time, we walk through this in a daily unfolding. And it's a perplexing thing that in the moment of difficulty, in the waters of Marah, in this moment of challenge that many of us are facing, that our world is bearing witness to in the unfolding of turmoil all around us, in this moment, God is speaking to us covenant language, and He's calling to us to listen carefully. to hear His voice and to follow Him, to do what we see Him doing, just as He did what He saw the Father do. He's asking us to do the same, and to hear His voice and to obey. And the journey is not just about being saved from bad stuff, which God does. He certainly rescues us from this. If we will turn from the things that we have learned from our culture, if we will be done with those in our heart, He will heal us. And so this is a moment of a beautiful invitation in this time, in this season, and it's never too late. And so I just want to encourage you, as the Lord has been encouraging my heart, to remember that this journey that we are on is a journey of healing, of being made whole as people, by one who went before us, who went this way as a man. Jesus went this way and lived a whole life so that we can. We are not able on our own, but He did this for us, and so we can take His life upon us. We can take His yoke upon us. We can learn of Him. And as we go this way, as we listen carefully and do what He has asked us to do, He heals us. And this is the great invitation. This is the great story that we are being brought into. And it is the story of the new heavens. It is the story of the new earth. And I just want to encourage you in your journey that this is the underlying theme through the circumstances of our lives, through these things that often perplex us, that we don't understand. But as we are learning to turn to Him, to listen carefully, and to do what He's asking us to do, it's not just a set of rules, it's not just discipline, but the Lord is bringing forth works of healing to make us whole and well people, to heal our minds, to heal our souls. And I believe also it brings healing into our bodies. And so I just want to again encourage you, one disciple to other disciples. We're learning about Him. I'm learning about Him. And I just want to encourage you to keep following, to keep moving forward in these steps of obedience, of surrender, of belief, and of faith. We are being transformed by the one who has rescued us from Egypt. He is making us like Him, moment by moment, day by day. Whether you know it or not, you are not the same as you were yesterday. God is doing great things in us, and I just want to encourage you once more, keep moving forward in faith, and let's receive the work of healing that He is doing within us. And so again, be blessed, be encouraged, be strengthened in the Lord. He loves us, and He has rescued us, and He is forming His image within us. So praise His name.